My name is Jack Turner, and if there's one thing I've learned living on land most people don't understand, it's that water always finds a way. You can slow it, you can guide it, but if you try to stop it without knowing what you're doing, it doesn't just push back, it takes everything with it. My ranch sits just above a natural creek that cuts through the land before running down toward Silver Creek Estates. That creek isn't just a stream, it's part of a drainage system that's been there longer than any road, longer than any house, longer than any HOA rulebook. It moves water from the hills, through my land, and safely down into the lower valley. And for years, it worked perfectly. Controlled, balanced, predictable, until Karen Whitfield decided it wasn't. It started with a complaint, then another, then a formal notice. According to the HOA, the creek was causing aesthetic issues for their community. Too much natural growth, too much uneven flow, too unpredictable. I remember reading that and shaking my head, because the one thing you don't call a natural water system is predictable. Karen showed up a few days later with her usual folder. "We've reviewed the situation," she said. I already knew what was coming, and I asked, "The creek needs to be modified." I almost laughed. Modified? How? Controlled, flow, clean edges, possibly partial redirection. I looked at her for a moment. "That creek isn't yours to modify. It affects our property," she replied. "There's a difference between affecting and belonging." She didn't like that. "We'll take necessary steps if you don't comply." I didn't argue, because I knew something she didn't. You can't force nature to follow HOA rules. And if you try, nature teaches you the hard way. A week passed, then another. Everything seemed quiet, too quiet. And that's when I knew something was wrong. I drove out toward the creek one morning, and before I even saw it, I heard it. The sound was different, muted, restricted. When I reached the bend where the creek flows down, toward the HOA boundary, I stopped. Concrete. They had poured concrete directly into the creek bed. A crude barrier, not engineered, not approved, just forced into place, trying to block the flow. For a second, I just stood there, because I couldn't believe someone would be that careless. Water was already pooling behind it, rising, pressing against the barrier. And there was no proper outlet, no controlled release, nothing. They didn't just interfere with the creek, they choked it. I didn't waste time. I called the county immediately, then environmental services, because this wasn't just a bad idea. This was a violation, a serious one. But while the calls were being made, the water kept rising, slowly at first, then faster. Because water doesn't stop, it builds. And when it builds with nowhere to go, it spreads. By the next day, the area around the blocked creek had started turning into standing water. Soft ground, sinking edges, the beginning of something bigger. And down in Silver Creek Estates, they started noticing. At first it was just damp patches near the lower properties, then puddles, then water that didn't drain because the system they depended on was broken by their own decision. Karen showed up when the inspectors arrived. She tried to stay confident. "We made improvements to control the creek," she said. One of the environmental officers looked at the concrete barrier. "This is unauthorized. It was necessary," she replied. "No," he said, "it's illegal." That word changed everything, because HOA rules don't override environmental law, and what they had done wasn't a small mistake, it was a major violation. The inspection didn't take long. They documented everything. The obstruction, the altered flow, the damage already starting to form, and then they explained what was going to happen next. The barrier had to be removed, immediately at the HOA's expense. But that wasn't the worst part, because the blocked water had already started changing the land. Saturation levels were rising. Drainage patterns were shifting, and areas that were once stable were becoming wetlands unintentionally. And once land starts transitioning like that, it's not easy to reverse. By the end of the week, parts of Silver Creek Estates were dealing with standing water that wouldn't go away. Yards turning soft, foundations at risk, drain systems overwhelmed because the water that used to move through the creek was now sitting where it shouldn't. The removal process started fast. Crews came in, broke apart the concrete, cleared the blockage, and let the water flow again. But by then, the damage was already done. Environmental reports classified sections of the affected area as protected wetland zones, which meant restrictions, limitations, and a long list of regulations the HOA never expected. They didn't just lose control of the creek. They lost control of their land. Because now, they couldn't build in certain areas, couldn't modify drainage without approval, couldn't even maintain parts of the property the way they used to, all because they tried to control something they didn't understand. The legal consequences followed quickly. Fines, mandatory restoration plans, environmental oversight, and costs that kept adding up. Karen tried to argue, tried to shift responsibility, but it didn't work, because everything pointed back to one decision, one action, one moment where she thought she had authority over something she didn't. Within a month, she stepped down. Same pattern, same ending. As for the creek, it returned to normal, flowing the way it always had, balanced, natural, untouched. And every time I walk along its edge, I'm reminded of something simple. Because the day Karen blocked that creek with concrete, she forgot one thing. You don't control water by force. And when you try to trap something that's meant to move, it doesn't just stop, it changes everything around it, including you.